Welcome to Close Up Radio, where our hosts Doug Llewellyn and Jim Masters engage today's top thinkers from around the world to bring you information, inspiration, and thought-provoking ideas you can put to use in your personal and professional life right now. Covering a broad range of topics, Close Up Radio digs deep to discover what makes today's top thinkers tick. Close Up Radio, where ideas matter. And now, here's today's host, Doug Llewellyn.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Close Up Talk Radio. We have a fascinating guest with us today. I think you're going to learn a lot, and I think you're going to find this pretty amazing. We're going to touch on the subject of forensic pharmacology and toxicology. It's an amazing subject, and we have an honored gentleman that we are delighted to have with us today. He happens to be the chairman of the Department of Pharmacology at Howard University's College of Medicine in Washington, D.C. His name is Dr. Robert Copeland, and he has been at Howard for a long time. He has been teaching, believe it or not, for over 35 years at Howard. He teaches students the subject of pharmacology and forensic pharmacology, and often, as a result, he is called upon to serve as an expert witness in legal cases. And not only does he teach students at Howard, he teaches juries in courtrooms, and that's amazing. I know that's not the kind of thing he was taught when he was a young student to do, but it's going to be pretty amazing to hear his story about what it's like. In any event, as you know, the law attempts to make things black and white, but medicine is a subject that is often very gray. You know, some people will respond to a drug while others may not respond at all because everybody's genetic makeup is quite different. And with so many people using different types of drugs, drugs are often used, abused, and then misused. And you know that. And no matter how thorough a drug trial may be, no drug has really ever been given to every single person. So you can't always tell or know what the effects of a drug are going to be on every individual. You just don't know. Forensic pharmacologists are the ones who take that information into court. And forensic pharmacology really is at the intersection of applied nature of pharmacology in an everyday setting and in the law. It's pretty fascinating. And as a forensic pharmacologist, Dr. Copeland's role is to analyze, assess, and review legal cases and to help attorneys prepare to cross-examine the expert on the opposite side of the issue. The doctor's area of expertise includes a broad range of cases, such as involving blood alcohol level, DUI cases, adverse drug reactions to medicines, overdose of medicine issues, drug interactions, and personal injury cases resulting from an exposure to medicines, or the effect from drug abuse or industrial chemicals, and an induction of cancer by chemicals. It's a wide range of subjects he has to deal with. And that's what he does. He not only teaches and touches on this with his students at Howard, who he's been teaching, as I said, for over 35 years, he does this for juries. Whether it's a college case or a jury, he is always educating people. So it's a delight to have Dr. Copeland with us today. He's on the line from his office at Howard University in Washington. So let's talk to him about this. Dr. Copeland, welcome. Nice to have you with us. How are you today, by the way?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be on the show.
Well, it's our honor to have you. I was reading a little bit about your background. As I pointed out, you've been at Howard for a long time. Tell me your story. It's really amazing. You started as a kid almost at Howard. Go back and tell me a little bit about your background. It really is interesting.
It started actually when I was in high school as a high school junior. I was chosen by my high school to be part of the American Heart Association summer program, and I was there to learn about the heart and everything like that, as you normally would. And once I had passed the test, they said I passed with fairly high colors and everything. They sent me out to different laboratories, and they sent me here to Howard in the Department of Pharmacology. I knew nothing about pharmacology. That's one of the first times I'd ever heard the word. And they sent me here to learn how to do experiments in the lab, and it was like a bug. It bit me, and I just stayed. So,
now, you were a high school student at that point, right? A high school student.
Yes, I was a high school student. I had not gone into undergrad yet, but during the undergrad years, every summer, I would come back to the lab, and I would work in the lab, and that's where I spent my summers at until it was time for me to come on to higher learning. And so I initially wanted to go into medical school, but I was convinced by the department chair at that time I didn't really belong in medical school. He said, "You belong in graduate school." So they sat me down right there, had me fill out an application, filled it out, and that was the end of the story. I was in graduate school from then on and finished graduate school and went on after that 3 years of postdoc training and happened to come back to Howard one day just to visit, talked to the chair of the department again, caught him in the hallway, and, just speaking to him, "Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Haven't seen you for a while." Asked me one question. He said, "What are you going to do when you finish your postdoc?" And then that's when I stopped flattening my steps. I hadn't thought that far, what I was going to do after I finished the postdoc. It never had dawned on me because I had been in school for so long. So I told him I didn't know. He said, "Good, we need you here as an instructor." End of story. And I've been here ever since. So
Isn't that amazing?
I kind of went up the ranks, and now I'm the chair of the department.
Well, that's really rare, I would think. Do you know anybody else who has a story like yours to tell? Yours is really, I think, most unusual. Wouldn't you agree?
I would say so, too. I haven't heard of anyone else that has come through the direction that I have and have stayed that long in the same department. And, sometimes people ask, "Why don't you leave here and go somewhere else?" And I say, "Who's going to make things work around here? I've been here for so long, I know how it operates." So, no need going anywhere else. It's in my blood now.
No, yeah, that's a good thing to talk about, blood. All right, you know all about it. Well, let's talk a little bit about what you actually you're teach. I know you're chairman of the department, but you teach students. You teach pharmacy students, right? Through various different courses. Go ahead.
We teach medical students. We teach the medical students, dental students. We have taught pharmacy students, physician's assistant students, and the graduate students. So we have quite a bit of teaching on our plate at any one time, and so a lot of times racing from one class to another to give certain lectures. So all of us in the department have been at it for quite a while.
And it's interesting that so many different students in different categories study pharmacology. For example, medical students. How much instruction does a student who wants to be a doctor actually get in the field of pharmacology? Does he get a lot, or is it a simple course that they take? How would you answer? We teach down by an integrative approach, so all of our courses are integrated together. So as a student is learning pharmacology is part of it, so we're teaching year-round in terms of whatever section that they're in, whether they're in skin or whether they're in cardiovascular. I'm also coordinator for the central nervous system section. So that whatever drugs that are in that section, that's what we teach. So when you really break it down, pharmacology is an everyday occurrence for any physician that is practicing medicine today, because they have to know which drugs to prescribe. And they have to know how, why, when, and everything else, drug interactions that may be there, serious effects, and anything else that deals with the drugs that they need to know in terms of a prescription. You can easily give the wrong drug if you're not careful, but if you understand the basic principles of pharmacology and how to give these drugs and what drugs to use for whatever ailment that may be there, then you become a good physician. That makes so much sense. And when you mention that, it just dawns on me that while you're teaching current students about certain drugs and effects and reactions they might have, it shows that doctors, once they graduate and they go out in the field and to practice the field of medicine, they have to constantly keep aware on new drugs, because new drugs are always coming out, and they have to learn and keep up to date on all those new drugs. How easy is it for the doctors to do that in this day and age?
It's somewhat of a challenge in terms of keeping up with all of the newer drugs that are coming out through different drug houses and approvals from FDA. But if you know the basics of the drug class, you know primarily what the drug will do. It's just a matter of learning, what is it good for, what is it designed for. Maybe changes in its pharmacokinetic properties, but the pharmacodynamic properties will always be pretty much the same. And so primarily what they're doing is designing drugs now that are more specific for certain molecular targets that we go after. Work in my lab, we're looking at certain things, and so we're looking at the targets that we need to aim it at. And so the drugs are designed primarily to affect just the target and leave everything else alone, and therefore you can reduce the amount of side effects and adverse reactions that a person would have.
That's interesting to know. So the majority, it's not like the majority of students you teach are actually going to be pharmacists who would end up, at a pharmacy or working in a hospital, in the pharmacy of a hospital. You really
no. Most of the students that we're teaching, these are medical students. They'll be practicing physicians, and also the dental students that will be practicing dentists as well too, because surprisingly they don't use that many drugs in their clinical practice, but the dentists need to know a lot of pharmacology so they do not have drug-drug interactions as they're dealing with a patient.
That's most interesting to hear. I wasn't really aware of that. I think most of our audience probably was not aware of that. Well, let's talk a little bit about the role that you've kind of shifted into. You haven't shifted into, it's just something that has kind of come along to you because you are a forensic pharmacologist, about being an expert witness in court cases. Talk a little bit about how that came about, and how did you get involved in doing that? And then we'll find out about what it's like. But tell me how you got involved.
It was actually almost by accident, actually. I happened to be talking to a friend of mine that was a lawyer, and she was kind of stuck on a case and didn't understand the drug effects, and she just, off the cuff pretty much asked me a question in terms of this. I've forgotten, it's been so long ago, the case that it was on, but I told her, reasonably what it was, and then she said, "Would you mind coming into court to say that?" And I said, "I'm not sure, but yeah, that's all it takes." And I went into court, and as you in the intro I was listening to, I kind of turned the courtroom into a classroom. Because what happens, and I've done it many times before, where when I go into the court and I'm looking at a jury, they don't understand a lot of the complex reactions that can occur in the body when a drug is introduced, and so you have to actually hold a class. And when you do that, they understand what the ramifications are of the drugs, and therefore they can understand as the conversation in the courtroom progresses through it. But, like I say, it's something I drifted into almost by accident. And that was the first time I went into a courtroom and started answering questions. And to be honest, I almost kind of took the courtroom over because I needed it as a platform. I wished at that time, really, I said, I need a blackboard and have my PowerPoints going, and I would have been fine. But I had to put the idea into the jury's mind at that time.
Have there been instances where the attorney on the opposing side of the case has been questioning you, trying to get you somewhat confused or whatever because your testimony is hurting their case? I mean, does that happen very often? We see that on television all the time. Have you experienced that in a courtroom?
That's every time. That's every time I'm in court. That's every time I'm in a deposition. They try to shake your story, try to shake your science that you know, and they really don't have. They don't. I know what I know, and so they know what they know. So I don't try to shake their story on the law, pretty much. But they try to get you to change certain things, and a lot of times the opposing side has their own expert witnesses. And I remember going into court one time. And the lawyer, I swear, he had to have been a toxicologist because the depth of his knowledge was just there. And I was shocked. And so we were talking back and forth, and answering questions, and he was going for it, and we were getting deeper and more complex in the science itself. And he asked me a question, and I needed some time to think. So I looked over at the judge, and I told the judge, I said, with the court's indulgence, I'm looking at the jury, and they don't have a clue of what we're talking about. And I said, can I go back and give them some basic pharmacology? And I immediately went into teaching mode. And for the next 20, 30 minutes almost, I taught. I gave a full lecture. The drug was, if I remember, clonazepam. It was an atypical antipsychotic. And I just taught the class. I was back in the classroom. Like I said, the only thing I needed was a blackboard and a piece of chalk, and I would have been fine. But after that, the judge said, "Now I understand what you're talking about," and it was so interesting because I needed that time to think and talk it through, what the question, and then I told the opposing lawyer, I said, "Now to answer your question," he said, "I forgot what the question was." And after that, they took a break. And he told me, he says, "You really understand this stuff." I said, "You're not too bad yourself." But, every time I go into court, it's always a back and forth in terms of the science to get an understanding. And as you said, we have to make it clear to people because they think things are just black and white. If I take this pill, it does that. Well, to you it may do, but to someone else, because of their pharmacogenetics, it doesn't. And so this is the part where it gets really tricky to understand what's going on. Or if they're taking, and a lot of people have the misnomer, really that I'm taking a herbal medicine. Herbal medicines can be just as deadly as westernized medicines can be. If you're giving them the wrong way or you mixing them with a herbal, supposed to be natural medicine, with a pill coming from a farmhouse. They can be dangerous. And so understanding the drug-drug interactions that go along with that and what's actually happening becomes very important. And that's one of the things I try to, expound when I'm in a courtroom or in a deposition. This is what the most probable effect is taking place. And I don't ever tell them this is absolute, because as you mentioned, no drug has ever been given to everyone in the world at any one time. So there's always going to be some outlier there that the drug is going to act in a different way than what we normally think it acts.
Boy, you're fascinating to listen to discuss this. This is it really is an amazing subject. Let me just ask you, when a law firm comes to you and asks you to serve as an expert witness for them, how much work is it for you to get prepared for the case? Because obviously you have to know all the details of what the case is and whatever medicine or issue is involved to be able to, testify clearly before the jury. So I was just wondering, how much time does it take for you to get ready to go testify?
Right. It's very variable in terms of the time that is actually used. And it depends on the case. Some of the cases I have are not that difficult when I'm talking about a DUI for the most part or something of that nature. That's not that difficult. But I have to really sit down with the client at that time and find out, I always ask the question, how much did you drink? I said, now be truthful. Let me know, because I have to do a back calculation to determine at the time that you were stopped, let's say it's a traffic stop, I need to get some idea how much alcohol was in your body at that time. So there's a back calculation that we can do. So we make it retrospective in terms of the numbers. Again, it can be debated whether the number is absolute or is a good number. But I think, it seemingly holds up in court because it has been used by other experts along the way in terms of the equations that we use to back calculate. But more than that, I also try to get some feel for the patient's life and their lifestyle, depending on whatever the drug is, because I need to know, why do you have this drug? Why were you using this drug? Or how did they get into your system? What's behind it? And that helps me a lot to understand where it is, why do you have it, particularly if it's a very strange type of drug that you're using, and it doesn't fit the behavior pattern. I need to know more information about it in that sense. So it can take a good bit of time and a lot of reading. I use mostly, actually really all of it, the National Library of Medicine and their journals, articles that are there, because I know that the articles coming from National Library of Medicine are peer-reviewed, and I don't have to worry about the quality of their research that has been done. So that has already been vetted, and I don't, you can't go to Google and do a search on stuff like that and go to Instagram. You can't look at things like that because it's very, it's very variable, and you don't know where the source is, but at least coming out of a reputable source of information, it's been vetted, it's been cleaned, it's been looked at, it's been tried, it's fairly true, you can trust it. So anytime I use it, I can go into court. And I had a deposition not too long ago. The fellow wanted to know where I got the information from, and I told him it doesn't come any better than from the National Library of Medicine. I said if they don't take anything in terms of advertisements, it is all peer-reviewed. It is all sound science that they put in there.
No kidding, yeah. Amazing. We're talking to Dr. Robert Copeland. He is the chairman of the Department of Pharmacology at Howard University's College of Medicine in Washington, D.C., and we've been chatting with him about his role as an expert witness in legal cases involving drug overdoses or drug interactions or whatever it could be. I'm interested to know, Doctor, obviously you're in
Sure.
Washington. Do you testify in court cases outside of the Washington metropolitan area? Are you called to go to, California or Florida or wherever at times? How about
yes. Matter of fact, it's interesting. I haven't testified I'll take it back. I've testified once in a D.C. court. Most of my cases are all out of state. I've been to Hawaii 3 times to testify
Wow.
there. Florida a couple times, Texas, Oklahoma, North Carolina. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but mostly I had one in New York too a while back that I've testified at. And if I don't testify, a lot of times I'll talk to lawyers. They'll get in touch with me, and I'll have to just write up an opinion paper and send that in, and that's presented for the court. So I don't always go to court, but a lot of times I call it a white paper or opinion paper that is used.
Right. Amazing. Are there any specific cases that pop to your mind as having been really gripping and memorable for you? You don't have to use any names, but examples of where you had to testify. What would you say was some of the most interesting that you've gotten involved with? How would you answer that?
I guess there was one case a long time ago. This one was a difficult case because it was a case that the woman was going from doctor to doctor to doctor, getting medications, and it was one of the narcotic type of drugs. And some people are very well suited for that, and it turned out it wasn't a young person. This was a much older woman that was going from, we call it farming as the street name, is because they go from doctor to doctor from different pharmacies and getting, the pills made, and they were using that. And just trying to, because initially, not just the drugs that I had to know, but I had to know where was she going, what hospitals, what doctors, what pharmacies. So that case took a very, very long time to get a handle on. And it turned out that she went to one hospital. There was, I believe, an overdose that took place, and they sent her to another hospital. And they sent, you send the medical records forward. And it just so happened in this one case, as I was going through, and there were really thousands of pages in this case by this time, and I picked up something just bothered me about this case that I said, everything seems to be in line, and then I found that there was one page missing out of 1,000 pages. One page. And they're not numbered or anything. And I said, something's wrong here because it's not giving me the drug levels and the lab values at this particular day, at this particular time, and it always happened the same day, same time, every single day. But one particular day it was missing. And I said, that's the day she got sick. And that's the day they gave too much drug. Okay? And it was difficult to prove, but finally we were able to get that one single page that someone had taken out. And that turned the whole case around for us.
And so what was the situation? Was she overdosing a lot, or was she getting pills from sources and selling them, or what? Well,
this is where the problem was. She was really abusing street drugs because she was going to the doctor, and I guess they wouldn't be called street drugs, but she was abusing some of the narcotics. And she was also being treated for other ailments at the same time. And that's what had me so confused, because I couldn't figure out, why were you suffering from this problem when what I normally just saw was one single prescription coming from the same doctor, because I wasn't getting the whole picture. And then when it finally came out of everything that she was getting, I said, now all of the pieces of the puzzle are laid out, and I can figure out exactly the drug-drug interaction that was taking place. That was my headache. of going through figuring out what drugs from where and the drug-drug interaction that was taking place. That was not easy.
Boy, oh boy, interesting. I would imagine you find this pretty interesting to do when you do get involved in a case, and it's certainly a really intriguing case like that. Let me ask you a little bit about the. By the way, if anyone wanted to get in touch with you, if some lawyer is listening and or law firm, and
right.
we cover a wide territory on this broadcast,
right?
How would they get in touch with you? You have your email, I guess. I don't see a website for you, but can I give your email out?
Yes, I guess so. But they can go to Seek Expert, SEAK Experts, and they can look in there and they'll find my name, and it has the information. Okay. Yeah, they can find it there to locate me. A lot of lawyers have found me there. So like I say, some of them they call me just for a moment or two just to chat, and I don't hear from them later on. And others, we do a full case that comes up, and I've had some individuals to call me because they done got in legal trouble, particularly with DUIs or marijuana laws or cocaine. And they want me to figure out how to get them out of trouble. I said, look, if they find it in your urine, there's nothing I can do to help you, because if it's there, it's there, okay? Yeah. And they've even gone to, I've had to testify about hair samples and things of that nature, because if you find certain drugs in the hair, it becomes sometimes a little difficult to explain, particularly with marijuana, because marijuana is what we call a lipid-soluble drug, and it can stay in the body for a very long time. And so the person say, I haven't smoked any marijuana, I haven't done this, I haven't done that, and I find it in the hair sample, but I didn't find it in urine sample. So I say, yeah, it's there, okay? And they can determine now, almost to the day, that the last time it showed up in the hair, because they can cut it into such small pieces and analyze the fractions of any kind of drug that is in your hair sample. So it is there. But it's an interesting field in terms of going into it, and I like it primarily because the application of the pharmacology I teach on a daily basis. So it's not just the lectures that I give all the time, but apply the lectures now to something that's real, that will affect someone's life and their lifestyle.
So it's been an interesting field for you, no kidding. By the way, that website, if you're interested in contacting Dr. Copeland, it's seekexperts.com, seekexperts.com, and connect his name there, Dr. Robert Copeland, and you'll find out that's how you can get in direct contact with him. You've been teaching now this subject for 35 years, as you point out, at Howard University in Washington. Have there been a lot of changes in the field? We only have about 2 minutes left, but I'm just wondering, have there been tremendous changes in your years of teaching? How would you answer that?
Absolutely. In the methodology that we teach, in the way, the number of drugs that have come along in the years that I started with. There's a lot of drugs I don't even teach anymore because they're not really used. A lot of lectures that I've dropped out, have been dropped off the lecture schedule because it's not a major problem, particularly in this country, like something like tuberculosis. I used to give that lecture every single year. I haven't given that lecture now probably in about 10 years because there's not a real push and a need for tuberculosis lectures in this country. Overseas it is, but not here. So I don't give those lectures anymore. And even the way that we teach it has dramatically changed. It's more case-based in the way that we teach, not just the information by itself, but you have to really apply it to a case. And that's really also, too, I kind of got into the field, is looking at cases that we present to the students. I said, DNL, these are real live cases I'm dealing with. Okay? So that's what I've been working with.
That's really great. Obviously, you love what you do. It's been a great career, and you're still extremely active at it. So thank you for taking time out of your day to spend it with us today, Doctor. It's been very, very interesting. So we appreciate it, okay? Dr. Robert Copeland in Washington, D.C. Thank you, sir, very, very much. Indeed.
Thank you very much.
And you're very welcome, sir. Nice to have you with us. What an amazing story and amazing career he has had. What a great guy. Thank you, sir.